Great. So thanks very much to our speakers for those introductions. Now I'm very pleased to present our panel discussion, which is focused on finding solutions to this issue. So for those who don't know me, my name is Katie Brown. I'm an account director at Concilio, and I'm delighted to be chairing this panel and to be joined by our panellists this morning. There will be an opportunity for audience Q&A afterwards, so keep your questions until the end, and we'll try and get through as many of them as possible. So before we start, I'd just like to ask our panellists to introduce themselves. So if we just start from this end side.
Morning, my name is Simon Locke, and I run a joinery company in Great Shelford. We employ about 45 people. We've been going for 98 years within 3 miles of where we are now, and we're looking to grow. We're looking to move for about 5 years.
Hello, I'm Ben Green. I'm at Edison Surveyors. I've been a commercial property agent in the Cambridge area for 20 years. So I've seen firsthand the issues and challenges occupiers are facing in securing premises to grow.
I'm John Halfpenny. I've been in this region for 40 years, involved in all sorts of tech startups. Early on it was software, hardware, more recently advanced materials. I'm involved in 2 companies that are relevant to this forum. One produces battery materials, it's based in Salisbury. Another produces graphene semiconductors, and that's based in Huntingdon. Between them they employ about 150 people.
Good morning, Charlotte Robin. I'm the Chief Executive of the Cambridgeshire Chambers of Commerce. As you would expect with that type of role, I also wear many other hats and historically have done so across UK manufacturing engineering. One of the hats that I still maintain today, though, is chairing a programme called Interact, which is part of the Made Smarter Innovation Programme. That's £4.5 million worth of funding that UK government is trying to understand how the future of industry actually will have impacts to society.
Good morning, my name is Bridget Smith. I'm the leader of South Cambridgeshire District Council. I'm also on the board of the Combined Authority and the board of the Local Government Association, and before I had this job I worked as a consultant in community and business support.
I'll use this microphone here so you can keep that one down that end. We'll start with you, Bridget. So we've heard a lot about sort of where the market is this morning. I wonder, how does South Cambs view the role of industrial employment space in promoting economic growth and job creation within the region?
Well, hugely importantly. So, we took over control of the council in 2018, and we were quite clear that we are a pro-growth administration at South Cambridgeshire. So we've not been afraid of that. We shy away from NIMBYism, which actually I think is one of the greatest barriers to fostering economic growth. We are engaging positively with Mr. Gove and his Peter Freeman over these plans for whatever Cambridge 2040 actually is. We wait and see. But there are huge constraints in this area which are out of our control. So you all know about water, energy similarly. At some point somebody's going to have to start talking about green belt, because obviously Cambridge is an incredibly constrained area because of green belt release. Obviously on places like the Cambridge Biomedical Campus, if that is to reach its potential, then obviously there is going to have to be a green belt release, but it's a very, very high bar for that release, and that just slows the whole process down. We obviously we're building new towns. Northstowe, there's stuff we can do. There is stuff that we can intervene on. So we bought the enterprise zone at Northstowe. So that didn't appear on any of those slides. So I hope in the very near future that actually becomes a serious site. Because apart from anything, I don't want to be left with a huge, expensive white elephant in Northstowe. So please do start giving it some consideration. So there are interventions we can have. We have the potential to borrow money for regeneration, and we're always very, very willing to do that, even though that's getting trickier in this day and age. So we see ourselves as partners in this. We work very closely with Cambridge City. We're completely realistic about what the demand is going to be. I think there's an ongoing conversation to be had about warehousing, because our carbon emissions in South Cambridge are already 25% above the national average. So, everything we do has to be about bringing that down, and having more lorries thundering down the A14 actually isn't going to do that. The other thing that's potentially a game changer is East-West Rail. Now, they're being very, very cagey talking about freight on East-West Rail, but again, there is a massive potential there, and I think people need to start waking up to what the opportunities are for getting lorries and so on off the roads, being able to get us to do the kind of last mile stuff rather better than we do. So I'm not convinced we need massive warehousing in South Cambridgeshire, but I think the emerging local plan, and Toomey Hawkins, Katie Thornbury are here, and I know we'll be happy to talk later. It's certainly not discounted now, but it has, it cannot be further damaging to our already very damaged environment.
Thanks for that, Bridget. I think the constraints is obviously a massive factor in Cambridge that I think everyone in this room is aware of. If I could just bring you in, Charlotte, on this. In terms of skills, so we hear a lot of sort of discussion around skills in this sector. I think there's an impression that the jobs in this sector are sort of low skilled. What's the impression that you're getting from the members on this?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a perception, isn't there, across sort of logistics and distribution, that we've got low-skilled roles. And of course, there will be certain roles that, just like in all of your organisations, I'm sure that you would like to remove repetitive tasks and apply your people to value-added work, and that will come in time. But I think if we look at how technology is transforming our logistics and distribution sector, it's fascinating. Just look at the amount of big data that's been created. If you've ever lost a parcel, we probably all take it for granted now that you can track where your parcel out of many, many millions is moving around the globe. We've got the application of vision systems, artificial intelligence, and what I've seen historically is where we've been training engineers and those that particularly going into facilities maintenance, where you'd have seen firms like Siemens and Jaguar Land Rover training, you're now starting to see firms like Amazon, because the warehouse space is going to change. It is going to apply more automation. It is bringing more robotics, and with that, the skill set will change. So yes, robots will take your job, but you're going to get a better one.
Positive note to end on there. And if I could also get our occupiers on the panel to come in here. So John and Simon, obviously very different occupiers. We've heard a lot, if I go to John first, we've heard a lot about the demand for new technologies. And John, you're in the battery space and have recently taken space, as have companies such as Niobolt. Can you tell us a bit more about the opportunity Cambridgeshire has for the battery sector? And will there be enough advanced manufacturing space based on your recent search?
Thank you. I think it's not just batteries. There are a whole raft of advanced material companies in this area, so graphene, life science materials. Excuse me. So there's a general growing demand, and it's driven by the fact that if you are in these businesses, you have got to have some kind of local manufacturing capability. Your ultimate volume manufacturing may not be in the UK. There's no reason why it shouldn't be if conditions can be provided, but certainly in the R&D and early commercialisation phase, having the ability to produce stuff in a moderate quantity that proves out that you can make it in large quantity is very important. So in the battery sector, we're about to put in a small volume production line in Sawston for battery cells. We don't make cells, we make the materials that go in them, but making a cell is important. In the graphene space, we've put capacity in Huntingdon to actually produce wafers, which we use to make semiconductor devices, which we're selling around the world. Actually, in that space, there's a likelihood that high volume production, these things are very small, highly automated, so high volume production is quite feasible. The number of issues we face, as many of the speakers have said, there isn't a great deal of space. We need hybrid space. We're not low tech. We're high tech, but we need manufacturing as well. At the same time, there's very little space locally. What space there is locally, the infrastructure that connects it is dismal. I mean, we have not managed to address industrial and commercial infrastructure at all. All of the infrastructure planning is based around residential, and that just means that logistics of moving stuff in and out, moving people to and from where you are, is absolutely dire. And it's hurting these businesses. We're finding we can't recruit some people from, say, the Midlands, because A, they can't afford to live here, but B, they just do not want to spend their life commuting. Suppliers take an extra day or so getting things to us. So infrastructure, I think, is one of the biggest problems. Another problem we face is that we focus far too much on 20 miles of Cambridge. You go and look around the world, look at California, Tokyo, Stuttgart, they're much bigger. And we need a much bigger vision if we're going to compete with these guys. If we're going to move out from being lab-based and soft-based, which is very, very small requirement, we need to think much more on a grand scale and put the infrastructure in place. Otherwise, we as companies, particularly high-tech Western companies, bring more in manufacturing. If it's hyper-compressed, as Cambridge is, they'll just go somewhere else.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear your take on that. I think we'll definitely come back to some of those points after. But Simon, I'd just like to bring you in as well. So how does that compare to your experience from the point of view of sort of more traditional manufacturer? And do you think policy has been focused on the provision of industrial and for traditional manufacturing in this area?
No, I don't think it has. I think there's, for us it simply comes down to the fact that as a low tech, or low tech in the sort of terms of what we're talking about here in medtech, etc. But we're a skilled CNC-based manufacturing business, but we're low tech in this sort of circumstance. We cannot compete financially. It's as simple as that. We have looked at space. We've been looking for 5 years now. We have seen the occasional building that works for us, but it doesn't work price-wise. It's as simple as that. And although obviously people can travel, we are very much an apprentice-based sort of staff where we are. So a lot of these guys have been working with us since they were 16. And I think that's amazing. We bring them in at 16, we train them, we have been doing it for 75 years. So our longest serving member of staff has been with us 49 years now. And there's lots of guys in their mid-30s who've been with us 20 years. But they're local guys, and what that means is that a lot of these guys haven't had to drive. You know, a lot of these guys don't drive, a lot of guys walk to work, they cycle to work. And we're based in Shelford, so we are in a great position for labs and for residential, whatever else it might be. And we're not short of an ability to sell our site. We could do that day in, day out. What we can't do is find an industrial space that we can go to that is affordable for an industry like ours.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned there in terms of sort of location. We sort of touched on it earlier, Bridget, talking about the constraints in Cambridge. You know, should we be locating this space sort of near to where people live to make it sort of more accessible and to take advantage of the good infrastructure? What's your view on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we've given our staff, probably quite foolishly now, this was 5 years ago, a pledge that we would try and stay within 5 miles as the crow flies of where we are now, to not upset the lifestyle and the lives and families of all the people we employ. So we employ, we're a small employer in the grand scale of things, we employ 45 to 50 people. And like I said, you know, all of those guys have been with us a long time. There isn't the ability for us to move our business even to Haverhill. You know, if we moved to Haverhill, which we've looked at some buildings there, we've estimated we'd lose about 40 to 45% of our staff. And you can't suddenly pick those up in a new area and start training them. We are a very unusual business in this area. If you go down to South Essex and some other areas of the country, there are lots of joinery companies around there. And there's a job market down there. You can hire and you can fire and you can grow your business. But you can't do that around here. So we have to take someone on, we have to train them, we have to try and retain them. Where we are now, we have the ability to grow, and we predict that we could grow the business, we could double the business in the next 5 years. But I think if we moved more than, let's say, 10 miles away from where we are, I think we would struggle to get anywhere near that within 5 years, because that whole 5-year time would be spent retraining the staff we've lost.
And Ben as well, does that sort of reflect what you're hearing from occupiers that are searching for space as well?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I think another example, not too similar to Wales, is Granta Processors in Woodersford. Some of you might know. This is on a 2-acre site. I've been on that site for 40-50 years. But they've been looking to grow and move for the last 15 years into bigger premises. And they've actually sort of wanted to stay within 10 miles or so for the reasons that we just talked about in terms of employment, etc. But they've bitten the bullet and want some nears now, so beyond the district. So that's an example. They're a traditional company. I think in terms of the sort of high-tech companies that John's involved with, I think again being near employment and near places, centres of population is important. Being near areas that are well connected, whether it be road or public transport, or you need the infrastructure to move the population from centres out to the land where we allocate for employment, so absolutely.
And then I suppose on the other side of the spectrum as well, we're talking about these sort of start-up companies and sort of smaller scale, but we've heard in sort of the talks about the scale of the existing stock. I think Marshall said that if they couldn't find anything close, then they would have to sort of look elsewhere. So if someone wants to build a larger facility, where would they go? I mean, this might be one for you, Ben, and maybe we could bring Charlotte in as well, and what you're hearing from your members.
Well, yeah, large facilities are very limited and very constrained at the moment. You've got the likes of land at Ely and Lancaster Way, Alconbury, where Marshall's heading to. But I think we need to be looking at bringing more land for those larger, whether it be homegrown companies or international companies who are moving to this area. Speaking to someone on the phone the other day, they do want to be near Cambridge because of the expertise, because of the university and the research. So we really face missing out on that investment from overseas and the growth of our homegrown companies.
We just pass it on to Charlotte if you're taking this as well.
I guess we've got to reflect what scale are we talking about. Of course, for manufacturing, large could be 150,000 square foot. For logistics distribution, we might be talking north of, say, 1 million square foot. In my experience, whilst of course finding the footprint is a really important piece, it's often the more kind of the utilities become really important. Energy, digital connectivity, and then all of those other facets, kind of your arteries and your veins. How do we make sure we can get people to work? We've got local good schools, nice places for people to live, places for people to enjoy the wider economy, and then of course access to the brilliant knowledge that we've got here, a world-class cluster. So it's that wider picture that often I've had discussions with our members as to what is it that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just conscious of time, so we need to get onto our audience Q&A. So I'd just like to ask the panel sort of quickly, if there's sort of anything you'd like to see more of to help address this issue, what is that? And I'll just go down the line. So, Bridget, if we start with you, maybe you can come.
Okay, so I think we have opportunities coming. I think Cambridge 2040, once we understand what Michael Gove's vision is potentially very interesting, provided it comes with money, provided it comes with the money for the infrastructure, especially on transport first. And I absolutely take away the point about, roads can't all be for domestic. We have to make sure that we've got the infrastructure that's meeting the needs of business as well. I should also mention that I'm one of the few politicians on the board of the Oxford-Cambridge Partnership, and I lead on the environment for that. So, there are opportunities there. We now have some structures which can potentially help deliver. Obviously, we've got the Combined Authority, who I'm sure are delighted when they hear that businesses are moving into Huntingdon or Wisbech or somewhere from Greater Cambridge. But, the risk, when we refer back to the SPEAR report, the Independent Economic Review, is that these businesses won't relocate within our environments. Actually, they'll go abroad. And that's what we need to avoid. But the Oxford-Cambridge Partnership is also putting together a sort of inward investment strategy. So, it's not enough that we are just catering with what we have. If we are really to thrive and we are really to become Michael Gove's, Silicon Valley, actually we have to be accommodating people who might be coming in, who can actually strengthen our economy, provide those high-value jobs that we want people to have. So, as you've already said, as your job goes to AI, so we have to make sure that there's a better job for you. Our local plan is absolutely predicated on sustainable development, and that means not just housing in isolation. We're not going to be, creating dormitory villages. It has to be housing associated with employment, associated with education, associated with health, and with leisure as well. And that's the overarching ethos of the emerging local plans. But I absolutely take away, what I've learned today about this suppressed demand. I'm sure Tumi and Katie were well aware of it, but I was less so. So thank you for that.
I don't think I can argue with anything that Councillor Smith has said. Collaboration is key. I think what's really important to business is that long-term vision. You need that North Star, and you do need consistency. And I think we need to bring the region together, both locally but across the wider region, because we are stronger together.
Again, I would agree with everything that's just been said. But also, I'd be careful with what you wish for. If you go and live and work in Silicon Valley, it's awful. It really is. It's unsustainable. It's a dreadful place. It's just grown. It's not being managed. So we do not need to emulate that. I'd also add that I agree. Housing should be near industry. Industry is growing, even though the businesses I'm involved with are high-tech. They need space and they have operators. We have a broader range of people. They're typically high-end, highly skilled, highly paid people. They have a choice. Our biggest restriction to growth is recruitment. We already find that people from the Midlands will not come here because they just don't think it's a nice place to be. They'll be paid more, yes. They'll have more opportunities, but the housing will cost them 50% more at least. And they will really, really not like spending an hour getting their kids to school and then spending an hour getting to work. Likewise, when we make products, even prototype products, if we can't ship them, then that doesn't help us. And I think the end game, if we don't get it right, is that businesses like these high-tech businesses can easily go anywhere else. The post-pandemic world, people can live and work virtually anywhere. These are not massive spaces needed. They're not particularly specialist. You can make a lab come production line virtually anywhere. So we need to get the peripheral stuff right as well. And we need final point, we need to stop compressing. Okay, companies would go elsewhere, they are going elsewhere. If the infrastructure links them, then the Greater Cambridge area can be the whole East Anglia if we wanted to be. Thus addressing some of the issues that we haven't really managed to solve for at least 30 years.
I can add that, I think we're obviously losing sites in Cambridge to higher tech labs, etc. And that's all very well. They're probably the right places to put these close to population, university, a lot of research, academia. And what we do need is a release of land for more traditional companies, whether it be WED or a range of occupiers, small units, car repairs, which are all being displaced. And they need to be, in close to some centres like Melbourne, Caxton, good transport. So really important to get that land and provide those units.
What Ben's just said exactly was my point. I think obviously we need more space, and that we desperately need that space out there. But I think we also somehow need control over that sort of B2 use and what it can be used for, because if I know in my hunt, if suddenly we're looking for 40 to 50,000 square feet, if 40 to 50,000 square feet suddenly got planning permission and got built within our search area, I know for a fact we wouldn't be able to compete for it, because it would go to a much higher tech industry than ours. It would go to a much more valuable industry than ours, wealth-wise. So well, even if that space comes, there has to be, like Bella just said, a restriction on use so that we have a fighting chance of getting it.
Yeah, as you said, sort of companies such as Web that's been in Cambridge for 75 years plus,
98.
98. There we go, yeah. Exactly. No, definitely really important to keep you guys in Cambridge. I think I'll now open up the floor to questions.
Hello, I'm Katie Thorpe. I'm the Cambridge City Councillor and Exec for Planning and Infrastructure. So, yes, we need to consider Cambridge City like people consider City of London, and the region around Cambridge is like the region around London, and Cambridge needs to be in the centre of our focus on this. And I completely agree with you, John, about absolutely understanding that we have to consider 50 miles around Cambridge, not 20 miles around Cambridge. But what we really need is to sort out the infrastructure. So I think we need Lord Lansley to get the Ely area enhancement, the train link above Ely sorted out, because we need to get as much freight onto the rail as possible. And we know that with further imports coming in from to Ipswich and Felixstowe, that we could double the amount of freight coming past Cambridge, and we want it on the trains. And it's really a viable option. We really need to sort the train lines out. If we could have a train line to Haverhill, that might help you for working in Haverhill and you'll be able to travel there within minutes. So, and we need the line, we need light rail, we need a connection to Wisbech, and around these huge transport hubs which are rail-based, then we can begin to think about further industrial units. But when you think of industrial units, please think about net zero. And I know some of the colleges understand that their space that they've got is really terrible for their figures, so they're looking at rebuilding industrial units with net zero capacity, so that is possibly more, not just single buildings, not isolated buildings, but collective development of industrial units, so that you can have heat networks to work with the whole lot. So, and then water, net zero. So I think, Charlotte, you were talking about AI and what's coming with AI, which is really exciting, but we need to plan for all of that to be net zero and also highly water efficient. And without actually planning that now, we're going to be in a much worse trouble, because we do not have the capacity to allow all of this amazing innovation here without focusing on the infrastructure. So please, all of you, help us sort out the infrastructure, the rail network, and then we can actually talk about some really exciting things. But Tumi and I are very aware that we do need R&D, technical and industrial spaces. We're not so sure about big logistics spaces, but let's sort out the travel logistics, and then we can be more focused on what's happening with last mile. Thank you.
Absolutely agree on the net zero point, hence my sort of indications earlier on that the really, aside from size of site, actually the interconnectivity of digital and also being able to provide the right amount of energy to a site, very important. Energy efficiency, really key. I see that we've got Paul Gibbons from Huntingdonshire District Council here, and I recall 2 years ago, perhaps, Paul, working on your local plans, where actually we talked about the opportunity to create green industrial spaces. There's a great way to drive inward investment, so I couldn't agree more. We've got to make that green space, because in my experience, manufacturers really struggle to be able to achieve net zero when their landlord perhaps won't invest in certain properties in the building. We've seen today that a lot of our stock is from the 1980s and therefore won't be as efficient as things built today.
Just add to
I just agree with everything.
I agree. Certainly in batteries, net zero is baked in unless you can make your product in a net zero way and prove it, you can't sell it. So a growing issue is that you have to demonstrate that the energy you use is net zero as well, which is a problem for this area, because if you look at the recently failed British Volt, the reason they were there was that they had green energy from Norway. We don't have enough green energy, we don't have enough nuclear here, we don't have green energy, and that actually is a growing problem. We can't say globally our products are made using green net zero input, and therefore it's harder and harder to sell it. So it's a very, very important intrinsic thing about products.
Tumi, I think you were next on the list of questions.
Hi everyone, Tumi Hawkins. I feel as if I should have brought an animal or something today, like the talks were like, what are you doing? Yes, I'm the cabinet member for planning, policy, development, management and engineering planning in South Cambs. Thank you for all the information. Yes, we have learned a lot. Yes, we knew that we had some demand for the industrial space, but not quite realized how much demand there is. The suppressed demand, I think, is what you've said. But at the same time, I think we are victims of our own success. And the local plans that we've had, the adopted local plans, as you know, were put together in 2012-13, submitted in 2014. We didn't adopt until 2018. So it was already like 4 or 5 years out of date. The current local plans that we're working on, jointly with Cambridge City, yes, we've had to do some more research to find out what we need up to 2041. We will take that into account. Thank you, and I would love to have that data, please.
Sure, we can make that happen.
Thank you very much. But one of the things I also want to mention is this. I deal with everyday people. When we get applications for big things, they go, we don't need that. What's that for? East-West Rail, I mean, we've been talking about infrastructure. Yes, we need it. I know we need it. I've told my residents we need it, but it's like, no, it's not for us. What are businesses doing to inform the communities exactly what the heck is going on here? Why is there so much growth? Why do we need all these things? Because that will make our lives easier to actually deliver what you need. I mean, take for example, the Genome campus. We did give them planning permission to extend because they make the case. Make the case. As Bridget said earlier on, yes, we would like to see growth. We would like to support it, but help us to help deliver that for you. That's my plea to you.
I just want to go back to infrastructure and urge all the people who are involved in the local plan to put near the top of your list the funding of infrastructure, which needs to happen ahead of development, not as a result of development. 3 examples you all know about water. We have built in the last 3 years phase 1 of Bourne Quarter next to a site on which we assumed there would be 3,500 houses. Bourne Airfield, not Tumi's favourite subject, but the fact of the matter is that it's going to happen. But it's not happening. It's not happening because the 106 agreement is now agreed but won't be signed because the EA have objected to the water. Now, that's not a problem for us, but it is a problem for our occupiers, many of whose employees want to live next door. That's an attraction. It's not an attraction anymore, and it's going to be a problem. You know about that. It's also hampered by the East-West Rail that's coming across the eastern end of the site, which again causes some issues. But 2 more fundamental things. Power. We had a quote for the phase 2 power that we required for £18 million because it had to come from Huntingdon. Well, that's quite ridiculous. Why? Because the Bourne substation is full. When it's not full, the power has been reserved by the developers of a 3,500 unit development next door to us, which now can't proceed because the EA, a government institution, is stopping it going ahead. Yet they've reserved the power for the next 15 years, and we can now, because we've secured power, we can build our phase 2 and phase 3. However, 10 gigawatts or whatever is being reserved by a developer that can't proceed because the government's telling them that they haven't got any water. So it's madness. Some of that power needs to be taken off them. I'm very sorry to say this because Vistry and Countryside have reserved the power, but the system is wrong. And fibre. Yesterday I met Openreach on site for a fibre connection. Apparently the nearest exchange is full. So the fibre connection for our 2 of our final tenants, and we have got a worldwide business about to take 3 units, they're going to have to go via Cherry Hinton. The guy from BT said it's just madness. So investment in those fundamental infrastructure items which are needed on day one needs to precede development. And if you want to develop around here more, and we will be developing phase 3 in the not too distant future, you need to get somebody to fund that rather than waiting for the developers to be given an £18 million quote, which is totally unrealistic for power. Thank you.
So, you have to get somebody to fund it. So, but the somebody isn't, well, we wait and see. The somebody isn't the councils, and that's the problem. When people look to us and say, sort out the water, because the reality is we might have a hospital that isn't built because there isn't enough water. Sort out the energy, sort out the transport. Little district councils do not have the money. The combined authority doesn't have the money. We have a broken system here. So what you actually need is a load of MPs sat here, because it is they, who actually are the people with the influence and potentially with the purse strings.
Correct.
So yes, the S106 system doesn't work. What we're going to get out of the Levelling Up white paper is even worse when those payments come at the end of the process rather than the beginning of the process. So we as councils are meant to find the money from somewhere, build the infrastructure, and then the developers then pay us the money once they finish building. But actually what happens if they go bust, if they don't finish, and we're left with the bill. So we have a broken system that's actually about to get even more broken. So, this is the problem that people think, and I know you don't, because you know this stuff. You don't think it's my responsibility to sort this stuff out.
Infrastructure.
It absolutely is. And so, the people that government listen to is the business sector. And particularly here, now we've got Peter Freeman coming in, and I'm sure, you are all talking to him. The message needs to get to him that, we are here to create a local plan, to give planning permissions. We cannot sort out these fundamentals. I mean, on the water, I gather that the Mr. Gove's water group has now met. They're talking about bringing the water down from the Grand Union Canal now. Apparently it can't come from Grand Union Canal. That's not something that's going to be done by next summer. These are major national engineering works. We've got them suggesting they're going to stop HS2 because of the cost. They will get to the point where bringing water down from the Grand Union Canal is too expensive as well. So, we have serious blockers that are way out of our power to control them. So, we need heavy lobbying of MPs.
Hello, yes, I'm Leo Shaler, I'm Vice Chair of Highways of the County Council. And yes, about planning, of course it anticipates to some extent, responds to demand, but what we need is an industrial strategy, and this is something that's got to come from government. I mean, good example, we're putting in 30 zero-emission buses a year, £15 million spent. Why are they being built in Egypt by Volvo? On highways we try to source locally because it's about community wealth building, but of course it's about the overall strategy. Ely area rail enhancement, of course. Out to the east we have the largest container port in the country. Less than a third of those containers go by rail. The rest are on our road network, which is already choked. So in local government we can pull some levers, but we all need to lobby the national government. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just one more. We'll just squeeze one more in. Thank you.
Thank you. Walter Scott from Bidwells. I'm dealing with industrial and logistics property. Slight concern, some of the comments I've heard about sort of reticence for big box. There are obviously and sort of lorries trundling along the A14. At the moment you obviously have no big boxes around Cambridge, as we discussed. There is a huge lack of supply of land. There are some obvious sites along the A14, large sites that could incorporate. We do need big boxes of 100, 200, 300,000 square feet, because at the moment the container trundle from Felixstowe to Peterborough or Huntingdon, and then the vans from Amazon or DHL or Yodel bring them back to Cambridge. So actually it would be better if we had some big boxes around Cambridge, which can be incredibly sustainable. They are massive roofs, these sheds have, so PV, electric charging points. I mean, you know, some of the schemes we have now are incredibly sustainable. Net zero carbon construction, and you know, actually when you get a large shed that's 200,000 square feet, it does have 20,000 square feet of offices. So actually, if you're a Biggleswade or a Huntingdon or a Peterborough, you know, to do that sort of office letting just doesn't happen. So actually you have some highly skilled jobs as part of those larger sheds as well. So I would certainly encourage councillors, planners to look at some of these large sites along the A14 next to our brand new superhighway that will give us some fantastic infrastructure, and will stop stuff going to Peterborough, Huntingdon, further afield, and then coming back, so our CO2 footprint reduced massively. I mean, a couple of examples. We looked for space for Hotel Chocolat, obviously a local occupier in Huntingdon, April 21 or early 21, needed expansion space, 400,000 square feet. We could not find it. We had to go to Northampton and take a shed there. So that's, you know, several hundred jobs going to Northampton. It's business rates, you know, big business rates going to Northampton. And Bid Foods, something like that as well. They wanted to take a unit in Huntingdon, 250,000 square feet, ended up in Biggleswade. Central Bedfordshire District Council benefited from, again, millions of pounds worth of business rates, more jobs, etc. So I guess it's just encourage everyone to consider that we do need big boxes. Yes, we need the tech. Yes, we need the mid boxes, the 50,000 square feet for the likes of WEDs that are affordable. But we also do need the bigger boxes for the Amazons. I hate to say it, but the DHLs, the Yodels, because it will stop all that traffic going all the way along the A14 and coming all the way back. So, yeah, just something to bear in mind.
Thank you very much. I think we'll probably leave things there for the panel, but thank you very much for joining us, and thank you to the audience as well for questions. I'll just hand back to Andrew now just to give the concluding remarks.
Thank you very much indeed. Can you join me in thanking our panellists? It's not really for me to draw any conclusions as such. I mean, I've got my own takeaways. I think all of us have got our own things that we want to take away from here. Thank you very much indeed to Rory and to Ben for the terrific data, because that's really important. The evidence is terrifically important. Just as planners have to work on objectively assessed housing need, I think actually objectively assessed industrial and logistics need plays a central part in the housing process. But I think if, from my point of view, as I think was pointed in my direction, I'm no longer a member of Parliament, and sometimes in the House of Lords we spend a great deal of our time disagreeing with the government and finding that they simply overrule us. But there's a lot we can do, and I think with Cambridgeshire, with my Cambridgeshire Development Forum hat on, I mean, for example, on Friday we're meeting, the forum's regular meeting, we're going to be discussing water resource issues with Water Resources East and Anglian Water, and the Environment Agency are coming, and so on. And so we need to absolutely keep some of these practical issues pushing forward. But I think a number of points were made, not least by Neil and so on, and Katie, that what we need, actually, I think, is the government has given us an opportunity in the Cambridge Delivery Group. I don't think we should look at it as government is going to come and tell us what to do around Cambridge, or the geography. I mean, I've actually had a conversation with Michael Gove where I've actually said, John, you'd be pleased to hear this, we need to think on a wider geography. Because when you read his speech, it's as if he was talking about Cambridge and nowhere else. And it's not, we're not going to answer our questions, the serious practical questions, in Cambridge alone. It's got to be done on a wider geography. So I've said that to him, and actually he didn't disagree. So I think we can use, I think collectively, what we're all aiming to do is to work together increasingly, not just as Cambridge and South Cambridge are doing, but beyond, with the combined authority with Huntingdonshire, with Peterborough, and of course Biggleswade is in Bedfordshire, and Haverhill is in Suffolk, and so it's a practical, political, governmental issue how to make that cooperation work. But if we can do that, in the next 18 months, we can try to establish with the Cambridge Delivery Group what it is that we need and what government needs to do to help us to deliver it, rather than the other way around. That's, I think, the practical issue. And of course, with an election coming up, actually that makes life a little bit easier, maybe, because governments, in a funny sort of way, governments understand that things can change. And that what the present government says, or the present ministers say, can change. And if you have housing ministers change on average every 7-8 months. So, the point is, if we have a strategy, the chances of that strategy being implemented increase. If we don't have a strategy, the chances of strategies constantly changing and nothing getting done increases. So I think it's incumbent on us to tell the Cambridge Delivery Group what we want rather than the other way around. But that's only my final thought. Katie, once more, thank you very much to you and your colleagues at Concilio. Thank you for Insurance Estates. Tim, thank you for your excellent analysis of how things are going. Thanks to our panellists and speakers again. But enjoy the networking. We don't have to rush out.
No.
So enjoy, have another cup of coffee. Yeah, there are still breakfast baps if you want, and have the opportunity to share some of the insights that we've really benefited from this morning. This will be an ongoing and a very fruitful discussion. Thank you very much indeed.